They say the most expensive suit in the room is usually worn by the person with the most to prove, but the man in the faded hoodie, sitting in seat 1A, had nothing to prove and everything to lose. Beatrice, the lead flight attendant for Stratton Airways, made a fatal error at 30,000 feet. She judged a book by its cover, assuming the quiet black man in the window seat was an upgrade mistake. She ignored him, mocked him, and catered to the elite around him. She didn't know that the man she was mistreating didn't just pay for the ticket. He had just bought the entire airline. By the time the wheels touched the tarmac, Beatrice's career wouldn't just be over. It would be a warning story told in flight schools for decades. The rain at JFK International Airport hammered against the fuselage of Flight SA-92, a rhythmic drumming that usually soothed the nerves of seasoned travelers. But inside the first-class cabin of Stratton Airways' flagship Boeing 777, the atmosphere was anything but soothing. It was electric with the specific, unspoken tension of high society jostling for position. Beatrice Sterling, a 20-year veteran of the skies and the purser for this flight, adjusted her silk scarf in the reflection of the galley mirror. She prided herself on being the gatekeeper of luxury. To Beatrice, first class wasn't just a seating assignment. It was a sanctuary for the right kind of people. She knew the passenger manifest by heart, mostly. Senator Reynolds in 2B, the heiress Clara Van Doran in 1K, and the tech mobile Alastair Kensington in 2A. But then there was 1A. Beatrice stepped out of the galley, her heels sinking silently into the plush navy blue carpet. She scanned the cabin, her practice smile ready to deploy. It faltered when her eyes landed on seat 1A. The seat usually reserved for the most VIP of VIPs was occupied by a man who looked like he had wandered in from skate park. He was young, black, and dressed in a charcoal gray hoodie that had seen better days, paired with loose-fitting joggers and worn-out sneakers. He had large noise-canceling headphones around his neck and was tapping away on a cracked iPad. His name, according to the manifest, was Marcus Thorne. Beatrice felt a prickle of irritation. System error, she thought immediately, or a non-rev employee using a buddy pass who got incredibly lucky. She moved down the aisle, bypassing 1A entirely, to greet Alastair Kensington in 2A. Alastair was a man who wore his wealth like a weapon. A bespoke Seville rose suit, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than a house, and an expression of perpetual boredom. Mr. Kensington, Beatrice purred, her voice dripping with professional honey. Welcome back to Stratton. It is an honor to have you flying with us to London again. May I take your coat? Alastair barely looked up from his Financial Times. Careful with it, Beatrice. It's vicuña. I don't want it jammed next to some riffraff's windbreaker. He tilted his head slightly towards seat 1A, a smirk playing on his lips. Beatrice let out a soft, conspiratorial chuckle. I assure you, Mr. Kensington, the closet is reserved for our premium guests. I'll make sure your jacket has ample space. She took the coat, hanging it with reverence in the forward closet. As she turned back, Marcus Thorne, in 1A, looked up. He had kind eyes, deep and observant, but tired. He held up a black denim jacket. Excuse me, Marcus said, his voice low and polite. Can I get this hung up as well? I don't want to wrinkle it. Beatrice froze. She looked at the denim jacket, then back at Marcus, then at the half-full closet. She didn't move to take it. I'm afraid the closet is quite full, sir, she lied smoothly, despite the empty hangers clearly visible behind her shoulder. You'll have to place that in the overhead bin or perhaps under the seat in front of you. It fits better there. Marcus paused. He looked at the closet, then at her. He didn't argue. He didn't make a scene. He simply nodded, folded the jacket neatly, and placed it in the overhead bin himself. No problem, Marcus said, sitting back down. Beatrice mentally rolled her eyes. Glitch, she thought. Definitely a non-rev or a lucky upgrade. Real money fights back. She returned to the galley where a junior flight attendant, a nervous young woman named Sarah Jenkins, was prepping the pre-departure beverages. Who was the guy in 1A? Sarah whispered, glancing through the curtain. He doesn't look like our usual crowd. Don't worry about him, Beatrice snapped, arranging crystal flutes on a silver tray. Probably a rapper's assistant or a lottery winner blowing it all on one ticket. Just focus on the real guests. Kensington needs a refill before his glass is even empty, and Van Doran likes her champagne with a single cube of ice. Don't mess it up. Should I offer 1A drink? Sarah asked, reaching for a glass. Beatrice swatted her hand away gently but firmly. Waste of Dom Perignon. Give him the sparkling water if he asks, otherwise don't hover. We save the good service for the people who actually pay the salaries. Sarah looked uneasy, but nodded. She was new, and Beatrice Sterling was a legend in the company, a woman known for her flawless service record and her ruthlessness with the crew. Crossing her was career suicide. Back in the cabin, Marcus Thorne watched the interaction through the reflection in his darkened window. He saw the dismissal. He heard the tone. He adjusted his headphones, but he didn't turn them on yet. He wanted to hear everything. He opened a file on his cracked iPad. It wasn't a movie or a game. It was a dense PDF document titled Stratton Airways, Executive Restructuring and Service Protocols Confidential. He scrolled to the section on customer experience standards. He highlighted a paragraph about universal respect, his finger hovering over the screen. Then he locked the iPad, looked out at the rain-slicked runway, and waited. The flight was 7 hours. He had time. The aircraft leveled out at 35,000 feet, the seatbelt sign chiming off with a soft ping. The cabin came alive with the soft clinking of silverware and the rustle of expensive fabrics. Beatrice moved through the cabin like a shark in calm waters. She was in her element. She poured vintage champagne from Mr. Kensington, laughing heartily at a joke she had surely heard 1,000 times. She knelt by Clara Van Doran's seat, discussing the latest gallery openings in Chelsea, making the heiress feel like the center of the universe. She purposefully skipped row 1 entirely on her first pass. When she finally looped back to the front, she stopped at 1A. She didn't kneel. She didn't smile. She stood tall, looking down her nose at Marcus, who was typing furiously on a Bluetooth keyboard attached to his iPad. Meal choice, Beatrice asked, her tone flat. She didn't offer a menu. Marcus stopped typing. He looked up. I believe I pre-ordered the lobster thermidor. Beatrice let out a sharp, incredulous breath. I'm sorry, sir. The lobster is reserved for our status passengers. We have a limited supply. I can get you the pasta or perhaps the chicken. Marcus frowned slightly. I confirmed the order on the app yesterday. It said it was guaranteed. The app, Beatrice said, saying the word like it was a disease, often makes promises the galley cannot keep. Mr. Kensington and Senator Reynolds have priority on the premium entree. Surely you understand. Across the aisle, Alistair Kensington laughed. He raised his glass of Dom Perignon towards Marcus. Take the chicken, kid. It builds character. Lobster is rich man's food, gives you gout anyway. Beatrice smirked, turning her back to Marcus to refill Alistair's glass. So true, Mr. Kensington, always looking out for the health of the passengers. Marcus looked at the back of Beatrice's uniform. He saw the slight fraying on the seam of her jacket, a detail only someone obsessed with quality control would notice. He remained silent. The chicken is fine, Marcus said to her back. Beatrice didn't turn around. Sarah will bring it out, she threw over her shoulder. 10 minutes later, Sarah arrived with the tray. She looked mortified. She placed the meal down gently. It wasn't the first-class plating. It looked suspiciously like a heated-up business-class meal plunked onto a nice plate. I'm so sorry, sir, Sarah whispered, her hands shaking slightly. Beatrice told me we were out of the porcelain covers. Marcus looked at Sarah. He saw the fear in her eyes. He saw a young woman trying to keep her job while being forced to be complicit in someone else's prejudice. It's okay, Sarah, Marcus said softly. What's your last name? Jenkins, sir. Sarah Jenkins. How long have you been flying, Sarah? 3 months, sir. This is my first transatlantic and first. Marcus nodded. You're doing a good job. Don't let the turbulence get to you. Sarah blinked, confused by his calm demeanor. Most passengers treated this way would be screaming for a manager. Thank you, sir. Can I get you anything else? A drink? We have a really nice Pinot Noir. I'd love a glass of water, please. No ice. As Sarah hurried away, Beatrice intercepted her in the galley. What are you doing chatting him up? Beatrice hissed, keeping her voice low so the real passengers wouldn't hear. He just asked for water, Beatrice. He's actually really nice. Nice doesn't pay the bills, Sarah. He's a seat filler. Probably used miles he scraped together from credit card sign-up bonuses. People like that degrade the brand. If we treat him like a king, he'll expect it every time. You have to manage expectations. That's how we keep Stratton exclusive. Beatrice grabbed a bottle of generic sparkling water, ignoring the crystal pitchers of filtered spring water reserved for first class. Here, give him this. Save the Fiji for the senator. Sarah took the bottle, looking torn. But she did as she was told. Back in 1A, Marcus took a sip of the water. He pulled out his phone. He wasn't supposed to have a signal, but he had enabled a satellite connection, a perk of the prototype device he was testing. He opened a messaging app. The contact name was Board of Directors Emergency Channel. He typed a single message. Authorized Phase 2 transfer. Total acquisition of Stratton Airways effective immediately. I want the paperwork filed before I land in London. Have legal meet me at the gate. He hit send. He then opened a second chat window. This one was addressed to Global HR Director. He typed, pull the personnel file for Beatrice Sterling, employee ID number 4922A. Also, pull the manifest for flight SA92. I need the full profile on passenger Alistair Kensington. Flag him for the do not fly review board. Marcus put the phone down and took a bite of the rubbery chicken. It was dry, tasteless, and cold. Delicious, he whispered to himself. Suddenly, Alistair Kensington stood up, swaying slightly from the 3 glasses of champagne he'd consumed in the last hour. He needed the lavatory. As he stumbled past seat 1A, the aircraft hit a pocket of turbulence. Alistair lurched, his hand shooting out to steady himself. He grabbed onto the back of Marcus's seat, his other hand swinging wild, knocking Marcus's iPad off the tray table. It clattered to the floor. Watch where you're sitting, Alistair barked, as if it were Marcus's fault the plane had moved. Marcus unbuckled his seat belt and bent down to retrieve the device. You knocked it over, Marcus said, his voice hardening for the first time. I wouldn't have knocked it over if you didn't have your junk spread out all over the cabin like a dorm room, Alistair sneered. People like you. You think buying a ticket buys you class? It doesn't. Beatrice appeared instantly. Is everything all right, Mr. Kensington? Is this passenger bothering you? She didn't ask Marcus if he was okay. She didn't check if the device was broken. She looked directly at Alistair with concern. He's aggressive, Alistair lied, straightening his tie. I tripped, and he snapped at me. I don't feel safe with him sitting this close. Beatrice turned her glare on Marcus. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to remain seated and keep your voice down. Disturbing other passengers is a violation of federal aviation regulations. If I hear one more peep out of you, I will have the authorities waiting at Heathrow. Do you understand? Marcus looked at Beatrice. He looked deep into her eyes, searching for a shred of professionalism. He found none, only bias, arrogance, and a terrifying enjoyment of her petty power. I understand perfectly, Beatrice, Marcus said. I won't say another word. Good, she huffed. She turned to Alistair, her voice softening instantly. Mr. Kensington, why don't you come to the galley for a moment? I have a special reserve scotch I was saving. Let's get you away from this situation. As they walked away, Alistair cast a triumphant look back at seat 1A. Marcus picked up his iPad. The screen was fine. He opened the Notes app and started a new list. 1. Immediate termination of Beatrice Sterling. 2. Full audit of in-flight service training protocols. 3. Lifetime ban for Alistair Kensington. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The flight had 6 hours left. The drama was just beginning. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber hue as the aircraft cruised over the dark expanse of the Atlantic. Most passengers in first class had reclined their lie-flat seats, cocooning themselves in Egyptian cotton duvets, but silence was a luxury Marcus Thorne was not permitted to have. 2 rows behind him, Alistair Kensington was defying the quiet hours. He had connected to the onboard Wi-Fi and was making a VoIP call, his voice booming through the stillness. I'm telling you, Gary, the deal is in the bag. Alistair shouted, swirling a glass of Johnny Walker Blue Label that Beatrice had discreetly topped off for the fourth time. "This guy Thorne, he's a ghost. Nobody's seen him in 3 years. Rumor is he's some socially awkward savant. I'm going to walk into that boardroom in London, dazzle him with the projected earnings, and buy his little tech empire for pennies on the dollar. He won't even know he's been gutted until the ink is dry." In seat 1A, Marcus adjusted his noise-canceling headphones, but he didn't play music. He turned on the transparency mode, amplifying the ambient sound. He wanted to hear every word. Alistair laughed, a wet, arrogant sound. "Yeah, I'm flying Stratton first. Best service in the sky, provided you don't have to look at the trash they let upgrade these days. I've got this individual in front of me. Looks like he sells counterfeit watches in Times Square. But don't worry, the purser knows who the real VIP is. She's been treating me like royalty." Marcus typed a quick note on his iPad. Alistair Kensington, VP of Acquisitions at Omnicorp. Strategy: hostile takeover based on undervalued asset projection. He switched apps to a secure terminal. He accessed the stock market pre-market trading data for Omnicorp. With a few keystrokes, Marcus initiated a poison pill protocol. He authorized his holding company, Thorne Industries, to dump 15% of their silent shares in Omnicorp. It wouldn't bankrupt them, but it would trigger a massive red flag for the SEC and cause their stock to plummet by the opening bell. By the time Alistair landed, his stock options, the ones he was likely leveraging to finance his lifestyle, would be worth less than the napkin under his drink. Marcus smiled a small, cold expression. Just then, Beatrice marched down the aisle. Marcus assumed she was finally coming to tell Alistair to lower his voice, as a standard protocol during quiet hours. Instead, she stopped at Marcus's seat. She tapped him aggressively on the shoulder. Marcus slid his headphones off. "Yes, I need you to power down that device," Beatrice whispered harshly. "The glow is disturbing Mr. Kensington. He's trying to conduct important business, and the light from your screen is distracting him." Marcus looked at her, genuinely baffled. "My screen brightness is at 0. He has his overhead reading light on, and he's shouting on a phone call. You do realize making calls is prohibited." Beatrice narrowed her eyes. "Don't quote the manual to me, sir. Mr. Kensington is a Diamond Medallion member. He has privileges you wouldn't understand. Now, put the iPad away, or I will confiscate it." "Beatrice," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I am reviewing documents for a meeting upon arrival. I am not breaking any rules. I am the purser," she hissed, leaning in close, her perfume overpowering. "On this plane, I am the law, and I say you are a disturbance. Put it away." Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. He slowly pressed the power button, the screen going black. "Thank you," she said, dripping with sarcasm. "And pull your window shade down. You're letting moonlight in." She turned on her heel and walked back to Alistair. "Is that better, Mr. Kensington? I told him to shut it down." "You're a gem, Beatrice," Alistair slurred. "Truly a gem. When I buy this airline, which I might just do after I finish with Thorne, I'm giving you a promotion." Beatrice giggled. "Oh, stop. But seriously, let me know if he breathes too loudly." Marcus sat in the dark. The injustice was physically painful, a tight knot in his chest. But he breathed through it. He thought about the emails currently flying through the stratosphere, the digital dominoes he had just tipped over. He pressed the call button. 30 seconds passed. No answer. He pressed it again. Nothing. He could hear Beatrice and Sarah in the galley. Sarah was saying, "Beatrice, 1A is ringing. Ignore it." Beatrice's voice drifted through the curtain. "He just wants more free water. He can wait until breakfast. But the light is on. I said leave it, Sarah. If you go out there, you're enabling him. Sit down and finish the inventory for customs forms." Marcus lowered his hand. He didn't need water. He needed to test the depth of their negligence. He had his answer. He reached into his carry-on bag and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a lapel pin, a simple platinum pin in the shape of a falcon, the logo of Stratton Airways. But the falcon's I was a real diamond. It was the founder's pin. Only 5 existed. 1 for the CEO, 1 for the COO, and 3 for the majority shareholders. Wearing it was a signal to any trained staff member that the wearer was essentially a god within the company hierarchy. He pinned it to his hoodie. It looked ridiculous against the worn cotton fabric, a diamond on a rag, but he wanted to see if anyone would notice. He wanted to give them one last chance to do their jobs. 2 hours before landing, Sarah came through with hot towels. She looked exhausted. Beatrice was nowhere to be seen, likely napping in the crew rest bunk, leaving the junior to do the heavy lifting. Sarah reached 1A. "Hot towels, sir," she asked kindly. Marcus took the steaming cloth. "Thank you, Sarah." As she reached to take his empty water bottle, her eyes caught the glint of the platinum falcon on his chest. She paused. She squinted at it. She had seen a picture of that pin in her training manual during Corporate History Week, but it seemed impossible. "Nice pin," she said tentatively. "It was a gift," Marcus said enigmatically, "from the man who started this company." Sarah smiled politely. "That's a nice souvenir. My grandfather collects airline memorabilia, too." She didn't recognize its significance. She was too new, and the training was clearly lacking. But she was kind. "Sarah," Marcus said, "when we land, I want you to do something for me. Go to the cockpit as soon as the bridge connects. Tell Captain Miller that the Falcon has landed. Can you do that?" Sarah looked confused. "Sir, I can't just barge into the flight deck." "Just tell him," Marcus said. "Trust me, it will make your day." Sarah hesitated. "The ovens were acting up," she lied effortlessly. "We couldn't heat the second option. This will have to do." Marcus looked at the cold bagel. Then he looked at Alistair's steaming omelet. "I see," Marcus said. "The ovens only work for Diamond Medallion members." "Exactly," Beatrice smiled tightly. "It's a smart oven. It knows who pays the bills." "That is a fascinating technological advancement," Marcus said dryly. "I'll have to ask the engineering team about that." "You do that," she scoffed. "Fasten your seatbelt. We're beginning our descent." As the plane dipped the nose, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. The weather is overcast, 12 degrees Celsius. We have received a priority landing slot from ATC, so we should be on the ground 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Cabin crew, prepare for arrival." Beatrice beamed at Alistair. "You see, Mr. Kensington, even air traffic control clears the way for you." Alistair chuckled weakly. As they should. 10 minutes later, the intercom dinged again. A specific chime pattern, 3 short, 1 long. Beatrice froze in the galley. That was the code for a VVIP protocol update. It meant ground operations had flagged a passenger on board who required special handling, usually heads of state or A-list celebrities. She rushed to the interphone and picked it up. "Cabin, Sterling speaking." "Sterling, this is the flight deck." Captain Miller's voice was tense. "We just got a text from HQ. They're rolling out the red carpet protocol. We have the owner on board." Beatrice's blood went cold. She scanned the manifest in her mind. Owner? Impossible. The owner was a faceless investment group. "Which seat, Captain?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. They didn't specify a seat number in the text, just a name. But the message says, "Ensure Mr. Thorne has expedited exit." Do we have a Mr. Thorne on the manifest? Beatrice felt the floor drop out from under her. She dropped the phone. It swung on its cord, hitting the wall with a dull thud. "Thorne, seat 1A. The hoodie, the counterfeit pin, the questions about protocols." She looked through the curtain. Marcus was looking out the window, calm, serene. Panic, hot and sharp, clawed at her throat. She had denied him food. She had insulted him. She had let Alistair Kensington abuse him. She had threatened him with the police. "Think, Beatrice. Think." "No," she whispered to herself. "It's a mistake. It has to be a mistake. A common name. That boy in 1A is not a billionaire. He's a nobody." She snatched the phone back up. "Captain, surely there's an error. The passenger in 1A is, well, he's a kid. He's wearing a hoodie. I don't care if he's wearing a clown's suit." "Beatrice," Captain Miller snapped. "HQ says the reception team is meeting the aircraft. Don't mess this up." Miller out. Beatrice stood in the galley hyperventilating. She looked at Sarah, who was securing the coffee pots. "Sarah," Beatrice said, her voice cracking. Did 1A say anything to you? Anything specific?" Sarah looked up. "He told me to tell the captain the Falcon has landed. I thought it was a joke." Beatrice's face went white. The founder's pin. The Falcon. She grabbed a bottle of premium water, the Fiji water she had denied him earlier, and a box of gourmet chocolates intended for Alistair. She rushed out into the cabin. Mr. Thorne. Her voice was high-pitched, wobbly. Marcus turned from the window. He looked at the water and chocolates in her hands. A bit late for the hydration service, isn't it, Beatrice? We're below 10,000 feet. I just wanted to ensure you were comfortable, she stammered, placing the items on his tray table. Her hand was shaking so badly the chocolate slid off. I realized there might have been a misunderstanding earlier regarding the meal service. I want to apologize profusely. Marcus picked up the box of chocolates. He looked at it, then handed it back to her. Save it for Mr. Kensington, Marcus said coldly. He seems to need the sugar. His blood sugar is likely to drop very soon. Sir, please, Beatrice pleaded, sweat beading on her forehead. If there is anything I can do. You can sit down, Beatrice, Marcus said, his voice hard as iron. And prepare for landing. Your performance review will be conducted on the ground. Beatrice backed away terrified. She sat in her jump seat, facing the passengers. She couldn't look Marcus in the eye. She looked at Alistair, who was fast asleep, mouth open. The wheels touched the runway with a screech of rubber. The plane shuddered and slowed. Usually Beatrice would be on the PA system, welcoming everyone to London. She couldn't speak. She nodded at Sarah to do it. Sarah picked up the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. Please remain seated until the captain turns off the fastened seatbelt sign. The plane taxied toward Terminal 5, but it didn't go to a normal gate. It turned toward a private hard stand, usually reserved for diplomatic flights. Outside the window, a fleet of black Range Rovers was waiting. A staircase truck was already positioning itself. Standing at the bottom of the stairs was a group of people. Marcus then turned his eyes to Beatrice, who was shrinking into the galley wall. Geoffrey, Marcus said, pointing at Beatrice. Who is this? Geoffrey looked at Beatrice. That is Beatrice Sterling, our senior purser. Not anymore, Marcus said. The silence in the cabin was heavier than the humid London air, rushing through the open door. Beatrice Sterling stood frozen near the galley, her hands clutching the back of a jump seat, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her face, usually a mask of haughty composure, was now a crumbling facade of smeared mascara and pale terror. Marcus Thorne didn't shout. He didn't scream. He didn't need to. He simply stood in the aisle, the platinum falcon pin on his chest catching the gray daylight, radiating an authority that made the air feel thin. Geoffrey, Marcus said, his voice calm, but carrying to the back of the first-class cabin. Please escort Miss Sterling off the aircraft, but before you do, relieve her of her ID badge and her scarf. She no longer represents Stratton Airways. Beatrice let out a strangled gasp. Mr. Thorne, please. I have 20 years of service. My pension, my reputation. It was a misunderstanding. I was protecting the premium cabin. You thought I didn't belong. Marcus cut her off, turning to face her fully. You looked at my clothes, my skin, and my quiet demeanor, and you decided I was riffraff. That is not protecting the cabin, Beatrice. That is poisoning it. He took a step closer. I bought this airline because it used to mean something. It used to be about the romance of flight, about connecting people. You have turned it into a country club where the membership fee is arrogance. You starved a paying passenger. You belittled a junior colleague. And you enabled a drunk bigot because he wore a tailored suit. Marcus pointed to the door. You are done. Security will escort you to the terminal to collect your personal effects. You are banned from the premises effective immediately. Geoffrey nodded to the security officers. They moved in. Beatrice, sobbing openly, now fumbled to undo her silk scarf, the symbol of her rank she had worn so proudly. She handed it to Geoffrey with shaking hands. As she was led down the stairs, she looked back one last time, not at Marcus, but the empty first-class cabin that had been her kingdom, now her place of exile. Now Marcus turned his attention to Seat 2A. Alistair Kensington was frantically tapping on his phone, sweat pouring down his face. This is illegal, Alistair sputtered. Market manipulation. You can't just tank my company's stock because of a flight argument. I didn't tank it because of an argument, Alistair, Marcus said, pulling his backpack over his shoulder. I tanked it because I saw how you make decisions. You judge value based on appearance. You are reckless, arrogant, and short-sighted. If you treat a human being like garbage because of their hoodie, how do you treat your employees, your shareholders? Marcus glanced at Jeffrey. Is the immigration police here, waiting at the bottom of the stairs? Sir, Jeffrey confirmed. We flagged Mr. Kensington for behavioral threat and intoxication on arrival. He will be detained for questioning before he can enter the UK. Alistair went pale. Detained? I have meetings. I have the merger. You have nothing, Marcus said simply. Enjoy the hospitality of Heathrow's holding cell. I hear the tea is lukewarm. As the security team hauled a protesting Alistair out of his seat, Marcus turned to the galley. Sarah Jenkins was standing there, pressing herself into the corner, looking terrified that she was next. Marcus softened instantly. Sarah, she jumped. Yes, Mr. Thorne. I'm sorry I didn't stop. Marcus smiled gently. You were the only person on this plane who treated me like a human being. You offered me water when you were told not to. You apologized for a meal that wasn't your fault. You treated the man in the hoodie the same as the man in the suit. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was heavy black metal with gold embossing. I'm appointing a new head of customer experience next week. I want someone who understands that service is about kindness, not class. I'm promoting you to the transition team immediately. You'll be reporting directly to my office. Sarah's mouth fell open. Me? But I'm just a junior. You're the future of Stratton, Marcus said. Jeffrey will handle your transfer. Take the rest of the week off. You've had a long flight. With that, Marcus Thorne turned and walked out of the plane, down the stairs, and into the waiting fleet of Range Rovers, leaving a shattered hierarchy in his wake. The convoy of black SUVs didn't go to a hotel. It went straight to the Stratton Airways global headquarters, a glass monolith overlooking the airport. Marcus stormed into the building, still wearing his hoodie and joggers. The receptionist looked up confused, but saw the entourage of lawyers and Jeffrey Sterling trailing him and wisely stayed silent. They entered the executive boardroom on the 40th floor. The room was filled with the C-suite, the CEO, the COO, the VP of in-flight services, and the HR director. They were all in impeccable suits, drinking sparkling water, looking nervous. They had heard the rumors of an acquisition, but they didn't know the buyer was the man who had just walked in, looking like a gym instructor. Gentlemen, ladies, Marcus said, dropping his backpack onto the mahogany table. I am Marcus Thorne, and as of 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I own 51% of this company. A stunned silence filled the room. The CEO, a gray-haired man named Richard Sterling, Beatrice's cousin, and the source of her protection, stood up. Mr. Thorne, this is unexpected. We were told the buyer was a private equity firm. Thorne Industries is the firm, Marcus said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Sit down, Richard. Marcus plugged his iPad into the boardroom's projection system. The screen flickered to life. I just took a 7-hour flight on your flagship route. Marcus began, his voice dangerously low. I wanted to see the product I was buying. Do you know what I found? He played an audio clip he had recorded. It was Beatrice's voice, clear and sharp. The lobster is reserved for our status passengers. People like that degrade the brand. The room shifted uncomfortably. The VP of in-flight services, a woman named Karen Vane, cleared her throat. Mr. Thorne, obviously that is regrettable phrasing, but Beatrice is one of our top pursers. She manages the VIPs very well. She manages the snobs very well, Marcus corrected. She ignored a quiet passenger to fawn over a loud, abusive drunk. And why? Because of a suit. Marcus swiped on the iPad. A graph appeared. It showed Stratton's customer retention numbers falling by 12% year over year. You're losing money because the room was in chaos. You can't just fire the executive team, the COO shouted. Who will run the airline? I brought my own team, Marcus said calmly. They're waiting in the lobby. People who know that a passenger in 1A is a guest, whether he's wearing Gucci or Gap. Marcus stood up. This meeting is adjourned. HR, process the terminations. Legal, I want a full audit of every passenger complaint from the last 5 years. If we ignored a customer because they weren't elite enough, I want a personal apology letter sent to them by the end of the month. He walked to the window and looked out at the planes taxiing below. He was tired. He was hungry. But for the first time in years, the airline felt clean. 6 months later, the wheel of fortune spins slowly, but when it finally grinds the arrogant into the dust, it does so with crushing precision. For Alastair Kensington, the bottom didn't come all at once. It was a slow, agonizing slide into irrelevance. The investigation by the SEC had been ruthless. They didn't just fine him. They barred him from holding executive office in any publicly traded company for 5 years. His golden parachute had been set on fire, and his reputation in the city was radioactive. On a bleak, drizzly Tuesday, Alastair stood on a train platform in Slough, a grim industrial town miles from the gleaming skyscrapers of his past. He wasn't wearing his bespoke Seville rose suit that had been sold to a consignment shop to pay his defense attorneys. He was wearing an off-the-rack blend that didn't fit quite right in the shoulders, and he was shivering because he had left his umbrella on the bus, a bus he now had to take because his Aston Martin had been repossessed. He checked his watch. It was a cheap digital Casio. The Patek Philippe was gone, sold for a fraction of its value to cover. Marcus nodded, looking out the window at the horizon stretching endlessly before them. That's all I wanted, Marcus said softly. To build a place where the person in 1A and the person in 34B are treated with the same respect. Where the price of the ticket buys you a seat, not the right to degrade another human being. You did it, Sarah said. You really did. We did it. Marcus corrected her. He tapped the armrest of his seat. By the way, I saw the memo about the new hiring initiative for veterans and single mothers. That was your idea. Yes, Sarah said. We need people who know what real life is like, not just people who look the part. Approved, Marcus said. Double the budget for it. He put his headphones back on. He didn't need to be treated like a king. He didn't need the champagne or the caviar. He just needed to know that his airline was flying right. As the plane chased the sunset toward New York, Marcus Thorne closed his eyes. He thought of Alastair, and he thought of Beatrice. He didn't feel anger anymore. He just felt a distant pity. They were grounded by the weight of their own egos. While he, the man in the hoodie, was finally truly free. The downfall of Beatrice Sterling and Alastair Kensington wasn't just a result of bad luck. It was the inevitable collision of arrogance and reality. They forgot the golden rule of humanity. You never know who you were talking to. In a world obsessed with image, Marcus Thorne proved that true power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to wear a suit. And it certainly doesn't need to bully the vulnerable. It just needs to be present, observant, and ready to act when the line is crossed. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about the arrogant getting exactly what they deserve. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is always free, but the price of arrogance is everything. Thanks for watching.